DK Live. It's NBA Pre-Lock Live, presented by Wilder versus Ortiz, live on Showtime. What's up? Welcome in. Adam Kaufman here with Julian Edlow. We are in studio. Geoff Ulrich is connected remotely. He'll also offer some remotely hot takes, or mild, if you will. Guys, how's it going?
It's going good.
Geoff?
I'm doing way better than Julian. Julian's a D- for the week. He's coming in not hot, cold.
All right, obviously Geoff is coming
in.
Listen, you're going to have to fight him back at some point. I don't know if we're going to have a Wilder versus Ortiz level cage match or something like that, but you're going to have to.
I was absolutely fighting back, and I just got another
D-.
That
was a little mild-mannered. I'm going to need you to ratchet it up a notch, because
clearly
he's coming in. I heard crying babies in the background before we came on. The man he's upset. Now, it's just the three of us because old Hardly Hera can't make it again tonight. So we'll roll with you guys for about a half hour now. Get your questions in, as always, with the hashtag DKLive on Twitter or right there in the Facebook Live comment section. Nice and easy for you. Again, get them in so we can answer them. We'll take one or two coming up in just a moment. But first, I want to take a look at the slate, because it is a 10-game docket tonight. Begins in an hour. Pistons in Orlando. Sixers will host the Hornets. You can see a couple right there. High lines tonight, though. Clippers, Knicks, 228 projected points. Warriors, Hawks at 226. Same for the Suns and Thunder. In fact, every game, as you can see right there on the screen, projected for north of 208 points. So where are you looking, Julian?
Yeah, I mean, we got a lot of games on this slate, a lot of good point totals, yet we just haven't had the news today to really capitalize on any situations yet. So where I'm looking is for some news to break so that we can try and find some, elite value on this slate. For right now, it's kind of a mix and match of different plays, and you want to kind of scatter yourself across these games. There's no specific game to stack. There's no specific team to stack unless the news changes.
Geoff?
Yeah, no, there is going to be some good value opening up, but like Julian said, we don't know exactly who it is yet, because we don't know who's in, who's out. So a couple places you definitely need to keep an eye on. Memphis for sure. If Harrison doesn't play, if Harrison doesn't go, and if JaMychal Green doesn't go, then my man, Jarrell Martin, not Jarrell Wright, Jarrell Martin is
correct.
One of the best values on this slate. Also, looking at Phoenix, TJ Warren is back, but it doesn't really mean that doesn't necessarily mean that you have to avoid that game altogether, because they're going up. It should be an up-tempo game against Oklahoma City.
All right, well, let's give you some of the ins and outs, as we always do. In fact, Geoff just mentioned TJ Warren. He is in tonight. Wayne Selden Jr. is in. Jonathan Isaac is in. Raul Neto as well. Also, Michael Kidd-Gilchrist is going to play. Guys who are out: Cody Zeller, moments ago, ruled out. Tyreek Evans, not going to play. Danilo Gallinari, Tyson Chandler, Sean Livingston, Chandler Parsons, Deontay Davis. Some lineup notes, some others. Giannis Antetokounmpo, we're going to spend some time on him. He is probable. We do expect him to play, but at the moment, technically probable. Taj Gibson, Andrew Harrison, JaMychal Green, and Tony Snell, all questionable. And OG Anunoby is doubtful, a name that obviously I love. So, Julian, of that group, who is the most impactful for you? I realize there are no huge names, at least among those who are not going to play. There are some question marks still.
Yeah, so Giannis, obviously the only big name in there, and it would be a real surprise to see him out tonight. So, as Geoff mentioned a little bit, the Grizzlies are the team that we have the potential to touch on. If Andrew Harrison and JaMychal Green are out, Mario Chalmers and Jarrell Wright Martin both become really nice value plays, and we don't have many value plays that really stand out on this slate too much. So the Grizzlies, of all teams, with a couple of role players potentially being out, is one of the biggest things we can capitalize on right now.
Geoff?
Yeah, no, Grizzlies for sure. I mean, like I said, that's the team that we're really, really waiting on. But there are a couple other names out there. Taj Gibson is another guy who's, I believe he's still questionable for tonight. So that could really open up some minutes for a guy like Dang, who's only 3,400. Now, he hasn't produced with those minutes, but at 3,400, that's something to look at. Norman Powell is going to get the start, I do believe, for the Toronto Raptors. He's 3,200. Now, I'm not really recommending him as a play, but it is interesting he's getting the start at 3,200.
Okay, so get your questions in. Again, hashtag DK Live on Twitter or the Facebook Live comment section. We have a couple early on, so let's take those. Continue to get them in, though, and we'll get to more later on in the show. First one from Dylan Sports 1 on Twitter. Is it wise to have Beal and DeRozan in the same lineup? Geoff, what do you think?
I mean, if you're going to stack this game and you like the game, and it is a pretty close matchup, the Raptors have been blowing teams out. I don't mind having both of them in. That's fine. I mean, there's fine correlation. If this does end up being a shootout, you could see Bradley Beal and DeMar DeRozan going off. So that's fine, but it is kind of higher risk. There's other games I'd rather stack, but if you do want to go after this game, it's fine to have both those players.
Jules?
Yeah, I mean, it's a solid GPP strategy. Those are a couple of players, obviously, that have the ability to go off. Now, with that said, are they the best shooting guard studs to target on this slate? I prefer guys like Devin Booker, Victor Oladipo, even Donovan Mitchell, whose price has come down after he had a dud his last game. So I like looking in other directions at shooting guard, but with no real elite plays, guys that stick out all that much on this slate. If that's where you feel you want to go, and it's a game stack, which gives you the ability, if that game goes off, to have both of those guys, then I have no problem with it.
Okay, one more question, then we will move on to our narratives, because these guys got to tell you where to start your lineups, right? From Jacob, what's a good game to stack tonight? So we've been on this a little bit, this topic. Clearly, you want to attack points. That's usually the way to go. What do you say?
Yeah, we don't really have an edge in this game so far, but we've been talking a lot about those tanking teams. When we had the show on Wednesday, I believe that's when Memphis and Phoenix played. A terrible game, but both teams scored around 120 points. So tonight, we have two of those teams that are tanking playing each other. It's the Dallas Mavericks and the Chicago Bulls. No huge headline names in that game. I think Zach LaVine's probably the most expensive player in the game, around $7,000 in salary. But you can look at that game as a game that might not have a lot of defense. So if we get a high score there, you're going to be able to find some good value somewhere on both sides, most likely.
Geoff?
I think the best game for stacking both sides has to be Denver-Memphis, because there's a lot of Denver players that are still in good shape. Paul Millsap's back, so maybe bumps down Wilson Chandler a bit, but he's still good value. I also got to say I like OKC Phoenix, more expensive players in that game. And then the one to kind of think about, it's not really a game stack, but you could definitely stack Detroit players tonight. They're going up against Orlando, who's almost as good at a DFS opponent as Phoenix, quite frankly. So guys like Ish Smith, very affordable, Andre Drummond. So I do like stacking Detroit tonight too.
If you guys could start to disagree sometime soon, that would be great, really, just for the...
Geoff picked 3 different games there.
Well, it's just not. It's not. And I want anger, fellas.
Well, it'll build up.
Throw some virtual punches, whatever it's going to take. All right, again, get those questions in, DK Live on Twitter or the Facebook Live comment section. But remember also, when you're getting ready to play your contest tonight, it's not just your usual standard contests or even showdown, things like that. You can also enter tonight's free basketball showcase that is presented by Wilder vs. Ortiz live on Showtime. Okay, narratives now. Each of these guys has a couple, and just the whole idea of narratives, you happen to be new to Pre-Lock Live. The idea is, you've been busy all day. These guys have not. I mean, they have, but they've been busy fixated on this and getting you all of the proper information for these shows. So anything that you have missed, they're going to cover as they tell you basically how you want to start your lineups. What are the key storylines, the things you need to be aware of? They've each got a couple. We'll get some reaction from who's ever not talking as well. Julian, give us your first.
Yeah, so my first narrative is just how safe are the studs on this slate. We have a 10-game slate. Generally, that means a lot of players to pay up for. But we keep talking about tanking, been a theme of the show, one that I keep touching on at least. Of the top 6 players on this slate in terms of salary, 5 of them, Russell Westbrook, Kevin Durant, Andre Drummond, Steph Curry, Nikola Jokic, all playing against teams that are believed to be tanking. So if those games get lopsided and those guys play, 25 minutes, how trustworthy are they actually? So studs on this slate, you want to consider, and obviously we're going to do our anchors later, and I'm going to have to pick one of these guys to go with, but just think about your game scripts when you're picking your players on this slate, because there are some very high-priced players that if a game gets out of hand, you could see one of your guys that you're really paying up for play 20, 25 minutes, and that would be kind of worst-case scenario for you.
Geoff, I don't like this. Is this what it's going to sound? I'm not picking on Julian here, but I kind of am. Is this what it's going to sound like for the next 20 games of the regular season?
Can I defend myself here?
Yeah, you can. And any time that we're going to have a star going up against a tanking team, it's, I don't know about this guy tonight because the other team sucks?
Well, so the reason it's my narrative is because tonight happens to be a unique slate where 5 of the top 6 price players are going up against teams that are tanking. On other slates the rest of the way out, you'd like to believe maybe 2 of those guys are in that spot, which is why we can say maybe this is why you want to look at this player because he's in a better matchup or a more competitive game. I think
Julian's making too big an issue of this personally. Yeah, there's going to be blowouts on every slate, but it doesn't mean they're all going to be blowouts. And if there is a blowout, that probably means that the stud in that game went off for a decent night anyways. So it's something to think about definitely going down the stretch, but I wouldn't necessarily worry about it too much. We got to pick someone. And like he mentioned, I mean, all these guys have good matchups. They're good matchups. Might end up being blowouts, but they're still really good matchups we've got to take advantage of.
I'm going to give you some numbers when we get to the anchors in a little bit, that some of these guys are not even in good matchups necessarily tonight. But Geoff, go ahead with your first narrative.
Okay, so my first narrative is just target the short rotations. I mean, Memphis is very, very shorthanded, especially if Harrison and Michael Green don't go. So you're going to get guys like Mario Chalmers in high minute spots. You're going to get Jarrell Martin in a high minute spot. Marc Gasol is going to be the focal point of the offense there because they're not going to have anyone else who can they can run through. And then, I mean, the Bulls too. The Bulls are still sitting players. Denzel Valentine's still in a really good spot. David Nwaba. And you know, like the Knicks kind of in the same spot. These are the tanking teams, but you got to take advantage of them. So definitely target the shorter rotations, target the injury situations. It's kind of a theme every night, but as we get to the tanking situations where teams are actively sitting players, you really have to keep an eye on it.
So, Julian, I said it before, and I say it all the time. You guys do too. This is not rocket science. Effectively, what Geoff just said is play the guys who are going to play, right? I mean, roster the guys who are going to get the bigger minutes, i.e. shortened rotations. Guys that, you know, you don't want to, even when you're seeking value, don't necessarily go for the 9th or 10th guy on the bench.
Yeah, I mean, overall, I agree with Geoff's take here, especially on Memphis, a team where we still have, you know, some notable names questionable. If those guys are out, yes, definitely that becomes a team where we want to play some players. But what I happen to notice about Geoff's take, stack the Clippers, stack the Bulls. Who are they playing? The Knicks and the Mavericks. Two of our tanking teams, after I just get crushed from my take, targeting against tanking teams. Where's Geoff looking? Right at those tanking teams. So this is going to be a narrative on every slate. I know you guys don't want it to be, but in this sense of it, it's not about the studs. It's just about games to stack, and look where we wind up, going against tanking teams.
Uh-oh, Geoff. Shots fired, pal.
He's bitter. He's bitter about Wednesday.
Forever bitter.
Well, there's no reply, though. There's no response. Now, I'm not, you know, I don't care about the war of words. I mean, seriously, he made a good point about some of the games that are worth targeting and the ones that are not.
Thanks, Geoff.
Or do you, well, don't celebrate.
I'm taking that as a compliment.
Are you know, is there anything that gives you pause about a couple of those games based on the matchups?
I mean, I think Chicago's a little bit sketchy tonight. Chicago-Dallas, just because it could just be such a bad game. Chicago is really, really bad right now. Like, in my opinion, we can go through some of these tanking teams and really start to pick them apart, but Chicago, to me, is one of the worst. They're actively, like, sitting out their best players. It's clear that they've just given up. Memphis is going to be really shorthanded tonight, too, so that could actually turn ugly. Like, I know we want to target it for value, but I admit, you know, Denver could easily just roll them, and it could get ugly. But they're going to be so shorthanded that I don't think it's going to matter. So I do feel more comfortable with Memphis. You know, the Clippers and New York is another situation. I still feel like the rotation in New York is short enough that we're going to be able to target the value there and not worry too much about it.
Okay, Julian, narrative.
Yeah, so my final narrative ties in a little bit with the other one. If you're going to fade one of those studs, consider fading Nikola Jokic. And I'm just looking at his price tag here. He is $9,700. 10 games ago in his game log, he was $8,100. He peaked last game, I believe, at $10,500. That's a rise of $2,400 in salary. And in that last game, he only managed 34 DraftKings points in 28 minutes. That last game happened to coincide with the return of Paul Millsap, who's been out for a couple months with injury. Millsap came off the bench, but played 23 and a half minutes, scored almost 28 DraftKings points. So we saw immediately Millsap take away some of that usage from Jokic. So yes, they're going up against a poor team in Memphis tonight, but if anyone has a bad matchup, it's Jokic going up against Marc Gasol, the only legitimate player on that Memphis team. So you maybe want to look away from him there, and a guy like Millsap starting to get more involved.
So, Julian, I don't know if you or Geoff, you had the opportunity to see Levitan's fadeaway earlier today. Jokic, one of the guys that he likewise staying away from.
I did not, but I'm glad we agree.
One of those guys that just based on the matchup, the price, the recent production, all of that, wasn't in on him. Geoff, how do you feel about it?
No, I mean, if Levitan says don't play him, then I'll agree. But no, I'm just – Julian's right. I mean, he's got the worst matchup on there. And if it does turn to a blowout, I can't see Nikola Jokic getting a ton of play down the stretch. So he's overpriced for me. I'd much rather pay down for Marc Gasol there if I was going to pay for either center. And quite frankly, there's just other players at that price. I mean, Andre Drummond, I think, is a way better play too, going up against the Magic. So he's not really on my sights at all tonight either.
Okay, who's your other narrative?
So my other narrative is Russell Westbrook. Can you realistically fade Russell Westbrook tonight? I'm not sure of the answer, really, quite frankly. I mean, we'll get into it a little bit when we go to our stud section, but I do feel like you shouldn't shy away from Russell Westbrook just because you're afraid of the blowout. Again, we went over it already, but a lot of these studs could be in a potential blowout situation. It doesn't mean that they're not going to score points, though, because Russell Westbrook could put up 60 DFS points in 3 quarters. So the matchup is too good. Phoenix has been like the Coors Field of basketball all season long. I see no reason to switch that tonight. And they have some good young players who are going out there for 30 or 40 minutes at least and playing well. So that's the nice thing about the Phoenix Suns. They play at a high tempo pace. I feel like you just roster Russell Westbrook tonight. There is a GPP strategy that I'll go over later that I think is interesting, though.
You have any thoughts on Westbrook, or you want to save him for the anchor section?
Yeah, I'll just give some quick thoughts to the direct question there, which is, do you have a chance to win without Russell Westbrook? And the answer, obviously, is yes, you do have a chance to win without Russell Westbrook because this is an Oklahoma City Phoenix Suns game. This game could be over in 2.5, 3 quarters. Has the potential to be. Do I think it will be? No. But it has the potential to be. So can you win without Russell Westbrook? If you think this game's going to be one-sided, then definitely look somewhere else if that would be the way you would win.
All right, skip over some of the lineup notes because you can see him ticking away on our beautiful side panel there in these new graphics display. Everything looks terrific. So you can see some of the guys who are in, who are out, who are doubtful, who are questionable, all of it. And obviously, as updates come in, we'll keep you posted. And you can get your questions in with the hashtag DKLive on Twitter or in the Facebook Live comment section. But let's jump right to the anchor section because, Russell Westbrook coming up. Jokic, a guy that you could put in that section. He's not in our particular section tonight for obvious reasons, that matchup that we just hit on, but he is a high-priced guy. So I will run down some of your options tonight, guys that have been picked out by these guys and our crack staff during the day, and we'll give you who we think anyway are the best ones to come out tonight, anchors and values. But first, anchors. Let's start with Westbrook. 11,800, high guy on the slate. He blew up, almost 60 DK points last game in Dallas, an OT win. He's in Phoenix tonight, posted 61 points against the Suns earlier this year. Giannis Antetokounmpo, 10 grand, 100, just 16 fantasy points in Detroit last time out. That was attributed to blurred vision in the right eye. He's facing Indiana, though, in this one. Pacers held him in check for 34 points in his last matchup. Steph Curry, 9,800, Warriors in Atlanta, DK points in the mid-30s the last 2 games. Very uncharacteristic for Steph. In fact, only one in excess of 50 points his last dozen games. So he has, relatively speaking, been quiet. And again, Adam Levitan talked to him on Levy's fadeaway earlier on DK Live. You can see that on the app and online. He's not a fan of playing Steph tonight. And the only other one tonight on this particular list, Karl Anthony Towns, Cat, 9,100 in Utah on the heels of back-to-back games with at least 60 fantasy points. He's been very good these last couple, and his price dropped by $500. Scored in the 40s in both meetings with the Jazz this year. So with that list, let's begin with Geoff, because Julian spoke last, and let's not let Geoff fall asleep. Geoff, who do you got? Of that group, who do you think the best play is tonight?
Okay, so, I mean, right off the bat, I'm going to say the best play, I think you should play Russell Westbrook tonight, but that's not my choice because, like I said, I wanted to go over a strategy. If you aren't going to play Russell Westbrook tonight, there's a couple ways you can go. You could either maybe play Paul George, who I think is fine, and you can target some other, maybe like Steve Adams, other players on the Oklahoma City Thunder, or you can play who I do like, and that's Steph Curry at 9,800. I know the recent form hasn't been there, but the matchup is there with Dennis Schroeder against the Atlanta Hawks. This is a very, very good matchup, and yes, the spread is big, and it's the Atlanta Hawks, but it's also a road game for the Golden State Warriors. If this thing does stay close, Steph Curry could be out there a lot. There's some injuries on the back end. Sean Livingston is out. Could mean a little bit more time. You don't need that much more playing time from Steph Curry for him to go off in this game. I do like it as a GPP strategy, putting him out there. It's risky, yes. Fading Westbrook, though, is risky, and if you're going to go risky, you might as well go for the lowest owned option with the most upside. So that's my pitch for Steph Curry. It's a GPP-only play. I do think that, if you're just playing like one cash game lineup or something, I'd probably just start with Russell Westbrook and go from there. But like I said, Steph Curry, I do think he's an interesting player if you're going to fade Westbrook.
given this burning hate that exists, the power, the fire of 1,000 suns between you two, rather than me ruling, I want you guys to react to each other's picks. So you heard the argument. I don't want you to bother grading it or any of that. But what did you think of Steph as a play tonight?
Well, first of all, if I were to grade it, it would be a D- in
Obviously,
my opinion.
Yeah,
just
naturally.
Pulling a random grade out of a hat here. But as much as I want to go against it, I mean, I will not be rostering Steph Curry tonight. I don't like the play.
So you are going against it?
Sure, yes and no. I don't like the play. I think Golden State blows Atlanta out. Atlanta is terrible. I don't care where the game is. I don't care that the Golden State is out on this big East Coast trip. But Geoff covered his tracks here well by saying this is very contrarian. This is, a shot in the dark. If Atlanta can keep this game close, a guy like Steph Curry could go off. But another reason I don't like it is, as Geoff said, if these teams are going to stay close with tanking teams, if these teams do blow out the tanking teams, that probably is a good thing for the star on the opposing teams. That means they're going to have a good game in short minutes. Well, the only team that's not true for is the Golden State Warriors because of their firepower. Golden State could blow out Atlanta. Steph Curry might not do anything. It could be all Kevin Durant, Klay Thompson, and Draymond Green. So there's a factor here where this game does get productive minutes from the Warriors studs, and it's not even Steph Curry. So for those combination of reasons, I'm not in on Curry at all. If you want to go very contrarian GPP, like Geoff said, then go for Steph Curry. See what happens.
Just refute it. Dump on the take. Geoff, listen, that's asinine. Okay, you have a $50,000 salary cap. I don't need a $9,800 shot in the dark. It's irresponsible.
It's $2,000 less than Russell Westbrook. Look, if Westbrook doesn't go off tonight, even if they tie in points, you're going to be ahead of the Westbrook plays. So here's a question for Julian. If you're not going to start with Westbrook, who would you start with?
If I'm not going to start with Westbrook, who would I start with?
Are you going to start with Westbrook? Because we haven't gotten your anchor pick yet.
Let me answer Geoff's question, then I'll give my anchor.
If I'm
not, Kaufman, don't worry. I'll take over for this.
Listen, I get paid either way.
All right, here are three guys that I would start with if I was not starting with Westbrook above Steph Curry. I would start with Giannis Antetokounmpo. His price came down. He has the eye issue. He's coming off 16 DK points. That's going to scare people away from him. He has a shot to have a big game here against Indiana, not the best defensive team. Joel Embiid, second night of a back-to-back, going up against Charlotte. People will overrate the Dwight Howard defense, but Joel Embiid always has a high ceiling. And then Karl Anthony Towns in Utah. He's $500 cheaper after a big night. Without Jimmy Butler, Karl Anthony Towns starting to show a little bit of a flash here, a little bit higher usage. So there's a handful of guys right there for you that I would go with before Steph Curry.
Man, you called Steph Curry risky, and now you're recommending a blind guy and two guys on back-to-backs?
Yeah, because I think they have a better chance than Curry.
Blind guy, two guys on back-to-backs.
All right, well, Kaufman's done hosting, so we're going to send it to Julian for his. We're going to send it to Julian Edlow for his anchor now. All right, who's your anchor? Russell Westbrook.
Okay, no, glad you took over.
$11,800. Yes.
If hypothetically you weren't starting with Russell Westbrook.
Yes. So we do have to talk about Russell Westbrook. He is playing the Phoenix Suns, but the last game that OKC played was against Dallas, one of the tanking teams we've been discussing. That game went to overtime, so obviously OKC not playing their best basketball right now. This matchup with the Suns is a picture-perfect one for Westbrook. Has a ton of ability to go off, and he's just the safest place to pay up for on this slate. So, like Geoff said, there are a lot of other contrarian ways you want to go. If you're playing cash games, Russell Westbrook's your guy. If you're playing GPPs, you can still get away with Westbrook and probably rostering any one of these other guys. Even if you wanted to be Geoff's guy, Steph Curry, you probably shouldn't play him, but you could if you wanted to. Giannis, Cat, you can put another guy with Westbrook and still figure out a good GPP lineup as some value trickles out here.
So really what it boils down to, Geoff and Julian both, I mean, it circles back to what you were saying before the show or in the early stages of the show, that you just don't particularly love any of the anchors tonight. This is a unique slate where you don't love the anchors and the guys that are in this particular situation.
That was my narrative. All these anchors have some kind of flaw, but we're going to have to pay up for some of them. So.
All right, well, let me ask you this. Do you have to? And here's what I mean by that. Like, the lineup you're looking at right now is probably more of a balanced approach than a studs and duds or stars and scrubs or any of that, obviously, because you're not going to pay up for a couple of these guys. It'd be one at most. What if you went really super balanced. You know, everybody is in the, I don't know what the math is, but everyone's in the 7K range or something like that, as opposed to bothering with one of these guys you don't like. Are there enough guys in that middle territory that you do like to fill out a lineup?
So I'm scrolling through that range right now, and just off the top of my head, if you wanted to go that route, interesting route, you'll definitely be different, so it could pay off in GPPs. You have Devin Booker at 8,400 in that OKC Phoenix game, highly projected total. Otto Porter, $7,000, has been playing really well lately. Victor Oladipo, $8,900. His salary's on the way down. He's hit value in a lot of games recently. Bradley Beal is a guy we talked about off the top of the show. Marc Gasol's right there at 7,900. Lou Williams, 8,100. Donovan Mitchell, 7,500. Blake Griffin has been terrible lately at 7,400, but he's a guy that kind of fits that narrative. So the answer is, of course, you can build a lineup any way you want. So if you want to try and get 4 or 5 of those $7,000, $8,000 guys in your lineup and then a couple of values, it would certainly be different. So it's a point worth talking about.
Geoff, is it crazy? What do you think?
I like pairing 1 or 2 of those guys with Westbrook personally. I'm not really that scared of rostering Russell Westbrook. I would say, again, I mentioned Paul George before, but if you were going to start, Paul George is definitely an option too. He should play a ton, even if it's a blowout. So I mean, at 9,000, I think he's definitely in play. He could easily match, or if Westbrook doesn't go off, could easily match him in points.
All right, guys, we'll do our value picks in a minute, but first I want to tell you Tony Snell is out. He's not going to play. JaMychal Green and Andrew Harrison out as well. So, Julian, you can begin with this. I mean, obviously, this is impactful news to some of the value guys. What does this do to your lineup construction?
Yeah, so for me, it definitely puts the guys we talked about off the top, Mario Chalmers and Jarrell Martin, in much better spots. These guys become 2 of the better value plays on this slate now. And even a guy like Wayne Selden, who was questionable for Memphis, now is in. So that puts him in a potential spot to be the GPP play. The most popular plays definitely will be Martin and Chalmers, though. And on a slate like this with limited value, that's definitely somewhere that you have to look, whether you're playing cash or GPPs.
Jason Terry's going to get the start for Snell, by the way. But go ahead, Geoff.
Sorry, I was just going to say, I still don't love Mario Chalmers, but I really feel like Martin is – I don't like to throw out the term must play, but it's pretty much a must play situation. They just don't have anyone there. 4,500, hard to fade.
Right? No,
hard
Martin.
To fade.
Right, yeah, okay.
I know.
See,
he has me. It's very hard for me not to say Jarrell right now.
Yeah, well, he's
because of Geoff.
He's in your head. He's in your head.
I guess so.
It's a Marcus Smart, James Harden situation. He is in your head. All right, let's go to our values.
I get to be James Harden in that scenario, so I'll take that.
You guys can take that up on your own time. Get your questions in, by the way. DK Live on Twitter with the hashtag, or, of course, Facebook Live. Just dump the questions in. We'll get to them coming up very, very shortly because we're already about a half hour from lock. Values. Paul Millsap, 5,200 in Memphis, 26 DK points last game in his first after wrist surgery. Had been out a few months. Only played 23 minutes, but trending upward. Trey Burke, 5,100 in LA to face the Clips. Strong the last 3 games, anywhere between 30 and 45 points in each of them. And, of course, I'm talking fantasy points, not real points. Jabari Parker, 4,700, matching up with the Pacers. Kind of boom or bust since returning to the lineup, but it hasn't been that many games, 10 or so, in large part because he's coming off the bench. At least 27 points, though, in 2 of his last 3, only 10 the last time out. Montrezl Harrell, 4,700 as well. Taking on the Knicks, he has reached at least 20 fantasy points each of his last 6 games, and the big man locked in at close range as well. I mean, virtually cannot miss, it feels like, inside 6-8 feet. So, Geoff, go ahead.
Well, obviously, if we had got the Memphis news, I would have picked Martin up there, but I'm going with Montrezl Harrell tonight. I mean, look, the Clippers are a team that we talked about a little bit. We haven't talked about any specific players other than maybe Lou Williams, and I think Harrell is just a player who's really coming on. He's starting to push Tobias Harris in the starting 5. He's been going at an insane clip, actually, just for production for fantasy purposes. I believe it's over 1 fantasy point per minute over his last 4 or 5 games. And again, this is a game where it's a pretty big point spread. He's a player who will get more run if it turns into a blowout. And even if it doesn't turn into a blowout, he's been so productive over the last 4 or 5 games that it almost doesn't matter if it only gets 22 minutes. I mean, I think 4,700, obviously, Martin is the safer play at that range, but I think over Jabari Parker, now that Giannis is in the lineup, I think this is just such a good matchup. And the Clippers have either the second or the biggest implied team total on the slate. It's a good, cheap way to get exposure there, so I like Harrell a lot tonight.
Yeah, Montrezl Harrell is a solid play 4,700. He's been doing well lately, but what can you really expect from him in terms of going off? You know his ceiling is going to be in the 25 to 30 point range. So why not spend 500 more, 5,200? You get yourself Paul Millsap. Yes, it's his second game back, but he's going up against Memphis. We just mentioned JaMychal Green out, so maybe not as many bodies to defend Millsap. And with Nikola Jokic there, getting Marc Gasol's defense, you know that Millsap is going to have a good matchup. Yes, it's his second game back. There's a little bit of an unexpected role here, but he did play the 23.5 minutes. He produced with the nearly 27 or 28 DraftKings points. So you've got to expect more out of him in this matchup.
So you're worried about the ceiling on Harrell, but you want to play a guy who's got a minute cap of 24 minutes?
Because in that cap of 24 minutes, you know that Millsap, when healthy, yes, he's playing more minutes, but he's a guy that can cost you up to $8,000. So you have if Millsap goes off in 24 minutes, you're going to get a much more productive. Harrell's only going to play 24 minutes at most, so you're going to get a much more productive 24 minutes out of Paul Millsap than you will Montrezl Harrell.
Well, but here's what it comes down to: you're ready to trust him, clearly. Geoff, you're just not.
I'm not. I mean, I like Paul Millsap, but I really feel like if this game does get out of hand, like, why are the Nuggets just going to throw Paul Millsap out there for extra time? I feel like Harrell's the guy who could play more than 24 minutes in this situation. So his fantasy production has been really good lately. I'd much rather take a chance on a player who's got the possibility of seeing extra time. I just can't see a situation where Millsap's going to get more than 22, 24 minutes, and he might get less. That's what scares me. So I'm off Millsap tonight.
Let me, at least for the sake of what Julian was saying, and look, I don't know how it's going to play out clearly, and none of us do, but with the framework that he is giving you, meaning these two guys are going to go out and play virtually equal minutes, which player are you more comfortable with?
See, I don't agree that they'll play equal minutes. I think that there's more of a likelihood that Harrell will play more minutes, and that's why I like him. I agree. Millsap's the better player. I mean, come on. It's not like that hard an argument, but Harrell has been very productive, and Millsap is coming off an injury. So I really feel like, given those circumstances and the fact he's actually a little bit cheaper, I'll slide with the Clippers there.
I mean, Harrell is trending up in minutes 4 games in a row. He played 29 minutes in the last game. But that's not sustainable. He's not going to keep going up in minutes.
You're not helping your argument.
It's not sustainable. If you look at his game log, yes, 29 minutes, 25 minutes, 21 minutes, then 16, 16, 12, 11. So at some point, Montrezl Harrell is going to assume his regular role. Maybe Tobias Harris, DeAndre Jordan has a good night, and the Clippers want to keep that guy on the floor. So there's definitely a floor here where Harrell can be playing 11, 12, 13 minutes. So that's just as much as plausible as Harrell being up in that 26, 27-minute range.
Geoff?
I just wanted to say Montrizzle.
Great.
But that's not his name.
Okay, questions. We got a bunch, so let's get them in, and let's go through, reasonably quickly anyway, and then we'll get our final thoughts and get out of here. From Adam, no, it's not me. With such little value on the slate, are players like Rubio at $5,900 and Griffin at $7,400 steals at these prices? Well, Julian, you can start here because you've already mentioned Griffin.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if they're necessarily steals. Particularly, Rubio hasn't been playing very well. Rubio's not really on the radar for me at all. Blake Griffin, yes, he is on the radar at $7,400. He has been playing terrible, you have to admit that, but going up against the Orlando Magic, so he has a good matchup. Griffin's going to play better at some point. So if this is Griffin's night and not Drummond's night, who's a guy that Geoff and I both really like, at some point that's going to happen. If it happens in this game, Blake Griffin has a really high ceiling for a player at his salary.
Geoff?
Yeah, I'm personally fine just not playing Blake Griffin. If he has a big night, eventually that's fine because no one's going to take him anyways. I mean, I think Rubio is the more interesting play there. It's a bit of a revenge factor, but Rubio's just been playing well. And, I mean, he's still under 6K. So if I was going to chance one of those two, I'd go with Rubio.
All right, we've got some breaking news. Chandler Parsons not going to play. Out. Illness. So, what then, sir?
Keep playing Jarrell Martin. I want to say Jarrell Wright, but Jarrell Martin.
Just makes him all the more automatic tonight, huh, Geoff?
Yeah, wasn't Parsons already out? Is that breaking? Okay, well, I don't know.
But yeah, I didn't want to throw Kaufman under the bus. I thought we knew that.
I'll throw Kaufman under the bus.
Look, I don't know. I mean, a lot of names get mentioned. If he was already on my list, then forgive me.
I think you already mentioned him, actually.
Well,
anyway.
Hey, all right, so I'll throw it, since we're going over the Grizzlies, I'll throw another name there. We've been hammering Chalmers. We've been hammering Jarrell Martin. Dylan Brooks, not a bad spot for him, 4,300. He's played 30 minutes in consecutive games, only had 15 DK points in both of those games. But if he can put it together, he could be in a spot where he gets maybe even 35 minutes. You would have to think eventually he's going to get some fantasy production in a spot like that.
I looked. He was on my list.
Okay.
Like, sometimes we're a little bit dumb. Okay, let's do more questions here. We've got a handful more before we get out of here. From Alexander, is Devin Booker a good play for tonight? Julian.
Devin Booker is a good play for tonight, and we have TJ Warren coming back into the lineup, a guy that gets some usage, gets some shots up, so maybe that scares some people away from Devin Booker. But Devin Booker's been a beast lately, whether Warren is on the floor or not. He's got a matchup against OKC. Not the best matchup on paper, but this should be a pretty high-scoring game no matter which way it goes, and I think it'll be a closer game than people think. So Devin Booker definitely on the radar.
Geoff?
I think Devin Booker's got a really nice floor. They're playing him so much. I will say this, Lou Williams, Donovan Mitchell, also in play at that price range, very similar players, but I actually feel the best about Booker. Just, I know he's pricier too, but I don't mind paying up for him in the spot. He's playing a lot, and I kind of feel the same way. I feel like Phoenix is going to come to play tonight. So,
next up, let's keep on rolling right along with these questions from Marcus. How's Durant looking tonight? Geoff?
I mean, it's kind of the same situation as Steph Curry. You could go Durant over Curry. It's really risky because there's a chance that, Julian already made his argument against it, that just one of these players could go off and everyone else could score like 30 points and not really pay off. So I will say this, again, one of the reasons why I do like Steph Curry, there's a couple injuries on the back end. It's going to mean a bit more minutes for guys like Durant and Curry, in my opinion. So he's risky, but he's definitely not like my favorite plays, especially, but same kind of deal, GPP.
Yeah, you're either going for the home run here or you're not. I wrote about it in the cheat sheet today on the DraftKings playbook. The best small forward matchup on the slate is the Golden State Warriors against the Atlanta Hawks. The Atlanta Hawks have allowed the most DraftKings points to the small forward position this season. Obviously, that puts Durant in a good spot, and when he's on the floor, he should be dominant. Question is, how much is he going to be on the floor against the Hawks, who there could not be more of a talent discrepancy than the Warriors versus the Hawks. So if this game somehow stays close, you could be rewarded, with 70, 75 DK points here. But if it goes the way that most people think it's going to go, Durant could be fantastic on the floor for 25 minutes and get 45 DraftKings points, and you're still not hitting value there.
All right, if that question was from Hall of Fame running back Marcus Allen, I hope these guys took especially good care of you tonight. Next question here, again, DK Live on Twitter. Laurie Marksman from Jack. What do you think?
Dallas doesn't play with the traditional center, so it's possible. This helps him. If I'm going to target someone from Chicago, though, I'm just going to go cheap. I'm going to go with Valentine or Nwaba. So not really on my radar tonight. Don't really love that game personally.
Yeah, I mean, the game makes sense to me. Markkanen, maybe just not the best spot. He's priced up a little bit more than usual. I think it's 6,000. Dallas, probably the slowest of the tanking teams when it comes to pace. So I'm looking to pay down a little bit, or if I'm paying for a player on Chicago, it would be Zach LaVine.
Okay, 3 more questions, and then we'll roll out to this party that seems to be going on outside the studio. Must be the money. That's Nelly. Doug, with a potential blowout, could there be some cheap boom plays on the Warriors bench? Julian?
Oof. Yes, there could be. And
Iguodala.
Yeah, so Iguodala at 4,400 is one of the guys that you can pay attention to. I was talking with Pirate Tom back there before the show about the potential of Iguodala tonight. The only thing is, this is a guy that we usually like to get at under 4K, and because he's coming off a good game, he's over $4,000, and because of his age, if this were a blowout, he might want to rest a little bit. So I like Iguodala, but there's also definitely bust potential with him.
So, Geoff, consistent with that, you want to move on?
Yeah, I can't think of anyone. I don't know. It's pretty risky. Iguodala, though, I feel like he'll get a few more minutes, and so.
All right, so one more, I guess, with McCaw and Livingston out. Swaggy P, Atlanta, maybe the perfect team for him to go off against. Not very competitive. Swaggy P goes out there, drops 30, thinks he's the man in a game that doesn't really matter. Could be one of those games for you. $3,000 on Nick Young, too, so minimum price. Definitely a GPP play. that you would not want much exposure to, just a name I'm throwing out there.
I was going to say, that feels very unlikely, but anything is possible. Okay, a couple more here. From Bill. Total worth a flyer with 2 studs. Geoff.
Yeah, Podol's kind of always worth a flyer, to be honest. I mean, he's productive when he gets out there. The Wizards have Gortat, so he could see a little bit of run. I don't mind it. I mean, especially, Toronto has a bit of an injury issue, so he could get a few more minutes. He's risky, but I mean, it's like I said, he's always kind of a player you can count on. When he gets the run, he produces. So,
yeah, I mean, I'm on board here at 4,300. If you look at his game log, he's played at least 19 minutes in his last 4 games. His last game, obviously, is the one that will attract you to him. 28 minutes, 40 DK points. I don't expect that. But that's his ceiling, and if we look at his floor over the last few games, 21.5, 21, and 28.25 DraftKings points in 19, 21, and 22 minutes. So he's getting some run. He looks like a guy that can go 5 times value without too much difficulty, so I don't see too much risk here and some upside. So yes, solid play.
Last question. Here's hoping it's a good one. It is from Max. Who would you rather play, Donovan Mitchell or Zach LaVine for cash and in GPP?
Ooh. That's a pretty good question, and I like both of these guys. I would say Donovan Mitchell would be my cash play there, and Zach LaVine would be my GPP play there, so a little bit of differential.
Geoff?
I think I'd just go Donovan Mitchell for both. I really like the matchup with Andrew Wiggins there. Maybe LaVine's a bit more of a cash play, actually, to me, just because I feel like he's the only really offensive stud on Chicago, so his usage is pretty much locked in. But I do like the potential for Donovan Mitchell tonight. I'd probably just say him over LaVine straight up.
Okay, we'll get to our final thoughts in a second. First, we got some breaking news. Chandler Parsons not going to... I'm just kidding. All right, final thoughts from these 2 guys. Let's make it relatively quick, like I said. Geoff, go ahead.
Yeah, no, make sure you take advantage of this injury news that just broke with Memphis. Like I said, you're getting such short rotations. Should be able to lock in some really good value return. Obviously you're going to have to make some hard decisions on the studs tonight. If you're not going to go Westbrook, take advantage of those, Lou Williams, Donovan Mitchell types plays, in my opinion, because they're the ones who are actually kind of locked into more roles.
You faked out the cameras here.
Personal encore.
I know.
So, yes, I mean, just to hammer it home, the Memphis news is the news of the slate. That's the team you want to capitalize on. But to rehash one of my narratives, just be careful with your studs. Pick games that you think will remain closer, and you've got Russell Westbrook, who's going to be a really popular play. If you're going to go away from him, use studs that are going to be not playing in potential blowout games against those tanking teams, because if those games play out the way you're supposed to, you're going to be very unhappy with their performances.
Okay, we get it. Don't play the studs against the tanking team.
Hammering it.
All right, NBA Pre-Lock Live. It's coming your way 3 times a week now, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Hope everyone has best of luck with their lineups tonight. You can go back in the next 15 minutes, rewatch some of the questions, some of the anchor value segments, that type of thing. Get all the information that you need. I'd encourage probably the second half of the show just to be the most current, of course, if you go back on Twitter or Facebook Live. And naturally, go out and have yourselves a great weekend as well. This has been NBA Pre-Lock Live, presented by Wilder versus Ortiz, live on Showtime. Enjoy us, that, everything. Have a great weekend. For Geoff, for Felix, Kaufman, talk to you soon.